2 years ago, I made a two-part video series called Why is Islam So Violent? It got a lot of flack and kickback, but other than trying to use the phrases PC or fearing being called Islamophobic flung at me, which I laughed off, I had no significant arguments that would change my position. It seems like the biggest backlash to my last videos involved people telling me that I was apologizing for Islam because I had met a few nice Muslims, or that my explanation for why Islam is so violent was because they were butthurt about losing some wars. The South, of course, is still bitter about losing the war, so telling people to just get over a military loss is not really rational. However, after discussions with a few people who could actually form rational arguments, I realized that some of my arguments were a bit too lopsided in terms of historical context. So I will be taking down both videos, and I have redone them with a bit more balance between them. I've made this series as an atheist, and not because I in any way, shape, or form agree with the tenets of Islam. I personally dislike the Quran to read, even if I wanted to just read it for enjoyment to find out about another culture. I think the tenets of Islam must be attacked on their own merits, argument by argument, and person by person. Klingschor and his other channel, The Lorientalist, does this in way more detail than a non-Muslim raised person would ever want to do or know. If you're not subbed to him, you should be. The Atheist Experience is an excellent way to learn how to take down any religion without knowing any of the details of it. However, if an atheist paints Islam with a broad brush as violent, without understanding the first clue about why Islam in its modern form is as crazy as it is, you just come off as an arrogant, insulated, ignorant idiot without the first clue of what you're talking about. Why the hell would they listen to a person who doesn't know the first thing about Muslim history and Western aggression, who gullibly thinks of the West as number one and 100% humanitarian always? Why would they even take the time to listen to your ideas about atheism if you're that naive? I know I don't bother to listen to people who don't show a certain level of knowledge base, nor should I. It would be a waste of both our times. Plus, you come off as a serious, out-of-touch moron, and your message is as appreciated as telling a black or Hispanic person that their religion is the reason why they aren't economically equal with white people. Bill Maher and Thunderfoot believe that Islam is the worst and most dangerous religion because of its core beliefs, and the statistics seem to bear this out in the current moment. However, is it because of the fundamental nature of Islam in the Quran, and makes Islam extremely more dangerous than Christianity or any other major religions? Well, let's see. Both holy books talk about vanquishing their enemies, both talk about killing non-believers, and both are for enforcing very strict regulations and harsh penalties for breaking them. An argument can even be made that without a little blip in the Gospels, from a humanist standpoint, the Bible is worse than the Quran, but only slightly. Check out my video on the religion off if you disagree. I'm going to have to say that it's not the books. There's something more to it. Many would claim that Jesus is what made Christianity peaceful, while the later stuff in the Quran overshadowed the earlier, more peaceful stuff. Many Europeans and Canadians who have debated me on this claim that no one in Christianity believes the more violent stuff from the Old Testament. Apparently they've never met the 33% of the US population, or some of the more extreme radicals in third world nations. Jesus did claim that he did not bring peace but a sword, and that the law was in effect until heaven and earth passed, which makes the Old Testament still valid. It really just depends on which parts you want to ignore, like any other religion. The order in which the Quran is written is actually debated and interpreted differently among Islamic scholars. Some view the Quran as running from front to back, some jump around based on textual dating, which changes which are the most relevant truths. Some believe parts are added not by Muhammad, some place little stock in the Hadiths and the Sunnahs, which has all the more violent, intolerant parts, and prefer to just stick with the Quran. Just like how the Bible is translated, the Quran is very similar, and thanks to illiteracy, many of the common people get their interpretations from their imams, just like how the Christians got theirs prior to Martin Luther's translation. Literacy was very low, and the Ottoman Empire was very unfriendly to public education, so literacy only rose from 2% in 1800 to 15% in 1900, with almost no women able to read. It helped control whatever message they wanted to make the Quran say without question, just as the Bible was used for centuries. The average person being able to read the Quran for themselves is actually a very new phenomena, as Islamic nations have gotten richer and education is more and more important to them. Christianity has 400 years to calm itself down after the average person was able to read their own holy book and interpret it for themselves. If Shia and Sunni are the Orthodox and Catholic Church, more extreme versions are the very early Protestants and are going through their burning times when witch fever plagued the Protestant European Christianity. The other organized religions of the time ignored cries of witches because they believed they had no power, but newly literate Protestants reading their book, literally, were freaked out about witches and demanded a purge. The most populous Islamic nation, Indonesia, has around 33% of occupants who believe that apostates should be killed. But that's not much different from the America's view on homosexuals a few decades back. They kill atheists through mob justice. But then thanks to corruption, mob justice is used to treat a lot of crimes. No different from the South and the US several decades ago either. You told everyone around there that you were Christian. Indonesia, due to its population size, should be viewed as the average of what Islam believes, if there is such a thing. And it's kind of like the American South in its moderate level tolerance, but intolerance held back by a secular government when their police are doing their jobs. So sadly, yes, the average Muslim is still a bit more religiously conservative than your average Christian, but even now both groups are moving more and more liberal with the new generation and the communication of the web. Nigeria and the Central African Republic also have incredibly low literacy and terrible religious-based violence against Muslims and suspected witches in the name of Jesus. I started out around World War I in this historic context of the evolution of violent Islam, and it was pointed out to me that that was pretty unfair. So I will back up a bit and give it a wider context in the series that will still lay blame on the West, but it wasn't so much out of evil intentions, but out of an old mindset, prejudice, and apathy. Just as an update, I have been planning on this series for some time now, and it's just coincidence that I released it a week after the Paris attacks. We need this understanding more than ever, and Muslims will feel the brutal backlash from this for years to come, claimed this horrible violence has been done in their name. If this is ever to end, dialogue and understanding is essential, or we will be more isolated and view each other as the other, and more violence will beget more violence. I stand with Paris.